Thanks very much for joining me. Really appreciate it. You well today?
Say again, sorry?
Are you well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it is. I'm still moving away from the transition of the whole lockdown because I was just dealing with my direct clients and I didn't refuse to take on one-off work. But then now life's kicked back in, like everyone wants stuff like now. And it's just trying to deal with people's patience as well. It's just like, just calm down.
Well, thanks for taking the time to join us today. So can you just kick off by talking a little bit about your own kind of background, your own sort of personal experiences with mental health, and then we'll move on to what led you to launching MANUP. And let's make an early point here about MANUP. It has a question mark at the end of it, doesn't it?
It's always one word uppercase with a question mark.
With a question mark, yeah.
Absolutely.
So tell us a bit about your own background and what your experiences with mental health have been.
Well, I guess realistically, I'm 38, no, I'm 39 now. But anyway, I slipped through the whole mental health net, if I'm honest with you. I was raised in care. I knew what sofa surfing was from a very young age. So I never was trained or learned anything to do with like mental health. And throughout my whole life, I've always been a top performer. I don't want to sound arrogant, but I've always been a top performer. I've been a DJ. I was DJing. I was at one point hiring out Ministry of Sound when I was doing event management and all of this kind of stuff. Oh. But whatever I did throughout life, I just never felt success at all. And at the back of my mind, I just wanted it all to be over. And I never knew what was wrong with me, because everyone's saying, "Oh, you're doing really well. You're doing really well. You're doing really well." But no one ever actually asked how I was. And I felt.
So when did you ever feel you didn't feel feelings of satisfaction and?
No. Not at all. Really? Saying that there was the odd things. So, for example, like I've been at Ministry of Sound, Camden Palais, like nightclubs with like 5,000 people in there at one point, and everyone's screaming your name while you're DJing, and you're just flat, absolutely flat.
Could you ever identify, going back to those moments? Could you ever really identify why that was? Not really. I think it's more to the point that I was always looking to swap to find something what would satisfy me, and I just never knew what it was. And I think maybe it's because of my background as sales, raising care, and all of this kind of stuff as well. I just didn't have any self-worth, and actually it was just purely and utterly down to what I now know is down to what we call high functioning depression and high functioning borderline personality disorder. Yeah. But I think I kind of knew about the BPD thing because a doctor, to be fair, did name drop that a few years ago, but I ignored it because their solution was just take these pills and we'll see what happens in 3 months. I took those pills for 2 days and I was a zombie. Really?
Absolutely.
You made that decision to stop, and did you go back or?
Well, no, I didn't go back. I went through life of just like falling out with people and relationship breakups and all of this kind of stuff as well. And I just never knew why. And when I tried to get help, to be fair, it was rare because I didn't want the stigma based around it. Back then I was a well-known DJ. I was doing the radio. I was doing pirate radio and all this kind of stuff. Do you get what I mean? So everyone's looking up to you like you're some sort of hero.
But doesn't that come back to the real point of this? Is it's all those expectations you were placing on yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
that you shouldn't have. So what was the moment where you actually kind of worked it out, and actually what happened after that point?
Well, funny enough, I've always done all right. I run a couple of businesses, and I presume we'll go into MANUP with the soon to be charity in a bit. I think it wasn't until I got married to my wife Faye when I realised when something she was telling me, it's like, Dan, there's something not right with you. Like you're not sleeping for like 3, 4, 5 days. Literally like no sleep and still running the businesses.
and I just knew that I had to deal with stuff. But I tried to get help about 10 years ago, but I was working for a company, and I remember I got called into a meeting. I won't say too much because obviously people can see things, but I got called into a meeting, and they were like, Dan, we've checked your medical records, and you said you've not had any mental health issues. I was like, no, absolutely not. How dare you even think? They checked my records that I was prescribed antidepressants like 10, 15 years ago, and they were just like, we're probably going to have to fire you because you lied.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
What was how did that make you feel?
Absolutely worthless.
Mm.
And I phoned up my brother, bless him, he's no longer here, but I phoned up my brother, who had he had borderline personality as well, actually, up to a point, schizophrenia, but that was never diagnosed properly before he died. But he said, blame me. I said, what do you mean? He goes, tell them that I used your name to go to the doctors to try and blag some free drugs. And that's what I had to do to save my career.
Blimey.
Yeah. So that put my mental health way back. Just not dealing with it. And so I do hear other stories, mostly from men, about that as well. They just won't hide it because they feel that they're just going to be, that stigma is just going to follow them around.
Yeah. Well, that brings us on to MANUP, really, because the issue around men and mental health, there has been progress, hasn't there? People people do talk about it more now, but for instance, the figures around suicide in men are shocking, aren't they?
Well, I think the trigger point for me was if I jumped the gun, tell me to shut up, and that's fine. But the trigger point for me was 2 years ago when Keith Flint died of suicide. I knew Keith. I've been at DJ sets with him and all this kind of stuff. Bear in mind, I'm from Essex and from the rave scene, so we rubbed shoulders loads of times. He was an awesome guy, but I remember reading about that, and then I was in this very office, and I was just like, I know more blokes who have killed themselves. I've been to so many, like, I started counting. I'm not running out of fingers. I know more people who have taken their own lives than have died of normal stuff, old age. And does that kind of make sense? So
yeah, isn't it? I think, is it suicide the biggest killer of men under 45?
Well, it is absolutely. But the thing what really I watched my mouth. The thing what really annoyed me is I saw a PR from the government a few years ago, or a couple of years ago, saying that suicide rates are going down, but up to a point, depends on what data you look at, is going down. But death by drink and drugs is going up, which technically isn't suicide. So, and I was just like, something's got to change. And I help out with it. I lead one of the Ipswich soup kitchens as well. Right. And when we go there on the Saturdays, it's the same stories: relationship breakdowns, this, that, and the other. I've seen a doctor queuing up to get some sandwiches.
Really?
And I remember saying to him, I was just like, how many lives have you saved? He was like, I stopped counting at like 1,000.
Unbelievable, isn't it?
And all because of that stigma, and he wouldn't open up. I'm not going to blame him, because obviously, but he just wouldn't open up, and then the relationship fell apart and all this kind of, it's that same story what just keeps repeating itself.
So MANUP then, how did it come about? So it was when Keith Flint died.
Yep.
That was the moment you decided you wanted to do something, and that's amazing, because I think there's probably a lot of people who feel quite strongly about this, but to actually do something so positive about it is brilliant. So tell me what your thought process was, and
to be honest, I probably blagged the whole lot of it because I knew something needed to change and I didn't know how to do it. But back then, I'm also a qualified drone pilot, so I got the license. I am one of those annoying people that buzz above your head, and I know my law, so back off. But anyway, back then the laws have changed, but back then in 2019, my license said that I could fly up to 1,000 people. So I was like, okay, well, what if I try and get 1,000 men in the field to put their hand up to say it's okay not to be okay? And I remember going through Google, the Ipswich Google Maps and all this kind of stuff, looking for land. Because we use the term or I use the term MANUP, people were rejecting it straight away. Absolutely. So I phoned up Jordan Holder, who's now a partner. I don't think he's realised 2 years later. I phoned him up to ask him whether he could have a good word with Coppleston High School, Andy, the headmaster. And within 5 minutes, literally 5 minutes, the headmaster emailed back to say you can have our school field. The 1,000 men, the 1,000 number was a gimmick. I was hoping for 500. Didn't quite get that. There's a few things, but the trigger point for us was when we done it, I was only going to do it as a one-off, just to try and get a conversation, and that conversation really started. And but on that day, I remember on that Sunday, the Orwell Bridge was closed, right? Because the police had to talk somebody down. So while we were doing a mental health campaign to try and stop all of that, somebody was, well, how close is Coppleston to the?
Well, you're probably 2 or 3 miles on the road, isn't it, away from there?
Exactly. Yeah, and the local PR stuff, and thanks to you guys, you picked up as well. We got some nice little coverage, but I was going to kill it that day. I was like, okay, we've done it. We've tried our best. That's it. And then we started talking, started getting messages through the page of men. What I found really bizarre was they were quite happy to message an anonymous name through like MANUP or that, for an anonymous name. I would also always say to them, like, have you spoken to your missus or your boyfriend or anyone? No, they won't understand. Literally every single conversation is they won't understand.
Why is that? Why are we so bad at talking about this stuff?
Truth be told, I think one is because men are seen as the alpha. Don't shoot me down on this one, but we are seen as alpha. Whether that's right or wrong, that's down to that person to decide. But in most cases, the man is the main earner. They've got a lot of pressure on there. They don't want to be seen as weak. And I think it's just down to that. But also from the feedback I've had from other videos, and I've never thought about it, is we don't want to pressure other people. We don't want to tell our loved ones that like, I feel like death. I'm really struggling, or actually I can't afford this because I've been secretly gambling on this. Do you get? We don't want to put pressure on people. So I think there's a few stigmas.
Yeah. You're right. I mean, despite all the progress that's been made in the last few years, it's still incredibly difficult for anybody to actually say to a loved one, "I feel depressed."
Yeah, exactly.
And I feel like I need help.
Yeah.
But that conversation people have to feel comfortable with that conversation, don't they? And it's the first step, isn't it?
Well, I think it's the person. Actually, it doesn't matter if anyone, doesn't matter what the gender is at the moment. If the person is feeling absolutely awful, it is on them to make that first step. But I have also heard stories as well where people have said, I've tried speaking to my missus or my boyfriend, and they're just too busy doing this, that, and the other. So it's not just about that person talking. Actually, each one of us has, well, in most cases, have ears. We have eyes. Just watch and just say it. I think up to a point we've gone too PC. And sometimes, actually, I don't know, if we're friends on Facebook and I know you're sharing mostly stuff about East Anglia Daily Times, blah 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 blah, and then one day you're sharing weird stuff, I'll be like, Brad, you're right, mate. And if you say, yeah, I'm absolutely fine, but you're still sharing weird stuff, I was like, Brad, you're being a bit, mate.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you sure everything's all right?
It's just having your eyes and your ears open, isn't it? And spotting signs exactly. And being afraid to ask.
Yeah, I just think so. I think social media has ruined that skill of listening.
Yeah,
I think we're so busy with our own lives and swapping busyness. Once we've finished one job, we're straight onto the next. I think we're ruining society. I don't want to be dramatic, but I think it's lockdown hasn't happened where we've just shrunk into our little bubbles, and anything outside of that bubble just isn't important.
Yeah. So just going back to when you first announced MANUP and
Yep.
made it a project, what was the response you had from men that you spoke to?
Do you know what? Better than I thought. I don't really know what I expected, because before it was just let's see how many men we can get into the field, and we'll break stigma that way. But on that day, I remember I think there's like 1,000 people said they were going to go to it or something like that, and I think it was like 200 or something like that turned up, and that's fine. I expected 5, but that's cool. But the amount of private messages the page was getting, it was always the same thing of, sorry I couldn't come, I've got diarrhea, I feel sick, and all of this kind of stuff. And I was just like, they're just excuses. This is men who actually have gone, actually, on one hand, have gone, actually, this is really a good idea. When the day happened, goes, I don't want to deal with it. And I know they're excuses because I've used every single one of them myself to not go to work.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? I guess we just need to encourage people to take that last step. It's a big thing, isn't it, to actually admit that there's a you're not feeling right.
Well, yeah, I think so. But I think what it is a lot of men don't want to say that they feel depressed. So actually, rather than say to your mate, doesn't really matter who it is, rather than say, oh, I'm feeling really down and low, because most men will think that's weak. And I get it. I have done for absolute years. Just say, do you know what? I'm having a real crap day today. Go for a walk with somebody, just do something, have a conversation with somebody, and just, you don't have to use that term, I feel depressed.
Yeah.
So actually, sometimes you may not even be depressed. You might just be having a really bad day.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think the last year has made things a little bit harder in terms of the lack of face-to-face communication? What's your
I think it has in the working environment. I think with MANUP, the one thing I have noticed is most people who would ask for advice about another person would be people they work with.
Yeah.
And I think it is, well, let's face it, most of us actually spend more time with our colleagues than we do with our own partners. And stuff like that. That's, well, it's 8 hours, isn't it? A minimum of 8 hours a day. So I do think lockdown and the whole COVID thing has taken a lot of eyes away from other people. Yeah. Did I answer that? Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Just a reminder to anyone watching that we, if you've got any questions, please put them in the Q&A, and we'll get to those. You've mentioned you feel there can be a particular problem around high performers who are hiding or just not. They're just very reluctant to talk about mental health problems. Well, can you expand on that?
Well, I think also as well, so some people themselves just don't know.
Right.
And I think that's a problem. That like the whole term burnout and stuff like that. Yeah. It's just like with me, I would easily work 12, 15, 18 hours a day. Because while I'm watching, if I was in the call center, if while I'm watching my name on the top of the boards with all the high thing is, because I'm focused on that, I'm not dealing with the stuff at home. Mm-hmm. So I'm working out to absolutely longer hours, or back then also, like I was ragging motorbikes around racetracks. That was my excuse to go and do that. And I remember going around some of those racetracks. You got to bear in mind, these are 1,000cc motorbikes. We're doing like 150 near on 200 miles an hour, and it's just I was using that because I'm so focused on that. I'm not dealing with the stuff at home. The stuff at home in my normal life was just building up and up and up and up and up. No, go on, sorry.
So it's almost the work and the other stuff that you do in life. It almost becomes a diversion tactic from the reality of how you're feeling.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. So especially, I think if somebody's just, let's pick on top performers, for example, if somebody's just like same old performer, and then suddenly
has like churned into like suddenly working stupid hours, that they're up to a point pushing boundaries, they're trying to impress other people. Most managers and directors were like, that guy's awesome, I'm making a fortune out of that person. But actually, after probably 2 or 3 months, that person's calling in, doing the odd sick days, turning up to work still half cut. And I've seen that happen so many times.
Yeah. So to go back to your own experience, so how have you kind of learned over the years to kind of manage your own mental health? What's worked for you?
I'd say for me, realistically, is actually not putting myself under so much pressure, and actually having time out to myself. If I want to sit there watching Netflix, then which is actually quite rare, but I will make sure that I do that. And many people who know me personally, like, I'm a massive EastEnders fan, and I have been for years. Is I will sit there, and that's just like my little recharge thing of just focus on that, and not actually feel guilty about that. But the other thing is just, for the last 6 years in September, I've been married to Faye, of actually just saying, I'm really struggling with stuff at the moment. And knowing that she won't judge me for it, and she'll step in with the business and answer the phones for me, or so I can just put the earphones in and put the Spotify on and just completely zone out.
Yeah. Just having that time where you can collect your thoughts and recharge a bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's also, I now know that actually the stigma. Well, I announced my mental health to you guys, East Anglia Daily Times, when I remember coming to the office on that corner bit, and
next to the football ground.
No, that was it. And I remember coming there, and was like, can we do your photo and all this kind of stuff? And I announced my own mental health journey that day, because I was like, do you know what? I'm sick of hiding it.
How did that feel? Because it's quite a step, isn't it, to go from keeping it low key to then suddenly you're in the newspaper, you're on the website, and you're exposing. I was gonna say exposing yourself to thousands of people. That sounds wrong, doesn't it? But you are exposing your feelings to a lot of people. How did that feel?
Well, do you know what? It's actually it was actually a load. It was massively a load off. It really was. There was the anxiety in me where I'm like, okay, I'm going to lose clients now. Clients are good.
Did you lose any?
No, not at all.
Good.
I had some of my clients just saying thank you so much for that. And I've dealt with major banks before. I know I've had directors of banks saying, yeah, I was off work for 3 years because of depression. And if you look at their LinkedIn profiles and all this kind of stuff, you would never ever know. They're doing very, very well. They've just learned how to deal with it properly. And that's where I decided, that's why I wanted MANUP to go, bringing those people out and just breaking that stigma.
Yeah. Okay, great. I thought that sort of kind of leads us on to a question here. So I've had a question from a viewer. If I'm worried about the mental health of my husband, but he doesn't seem to think anything is wrong, how should I handle that?
Ask a mate.
Ask a friend.
Literally, ask one of his mates. So for example, here I use. Actually, I will. Faye won't mind. Faye's got her own mental health issues, which she's doing very, very well with. I'm not scared to ring up her mother-in-law and say, Faye is doing my head in now. She won't listen to me, and Faye will kill me for this. But the mother-in-law will ring up and just have a chat, won't even mention that I thingy, but don't be scared to speak to. I think the thing is, people think they're going to be judged by other people, but actually you won't. Yeah, you might get the odd idiot, which is so rare. In 4 or 5 years, I'm sorry, 2 years of being quite public about my own mental health, I've had 2 trolls. I hit block.
Yeah. Well, the positive comments that you get, I mean, that that's good, but it also that it'll be all the unseen stuff that you create that you will make people feel more comfortable about opening up, and that's so important. Because I was going to say, how can we help facilitate more conversations like this about men's mental health to stop men feeling like they you know, suffering in silence is the best option, because it never is.
No, well, it's not. No, it's like the true. I remember when I wanted to call this stuff in the whole term MANUP, and one of my friends, he dealt with the mental health thing in the NHS. He was like, "Don't use that term. It was quite negative." So I started Googling it to find out actually what the true meaning of MANUP is. And actually, the first version of it is actually to deal with an unpleasant or awkward situation.
Yeah.
Well, that's what mental health is, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just gonna, it's not a question, it's just a comment really, from one of our attendees, Lexi, who said, I don't have a question, but as a mother of 2 boys, I can hand on heart say that listening to this has been heartwarming. I teach my boys the power of conversation, and it's okay not to be okay. To have an organisation such as this normalises men, boys talking and being open about their feelings, this is long overdue. So,
well,
thank you for that, Lexi. I really appreciate that comment, and it shows, doesn't it, that these conversations have an impact, and we need to have more of them.
Yeah. I think just very quickly on that one, because I know time thing, but the one thing I think we just need to be very careful, especially with the more blokey blokes. You sometimes can ask people how they are without saying, you look like you're depressed, mate. Yeah. And literally call them out on something. Don't be an idiot about it, but call them out, just say, man, you're being weird at the minute. Is everything all right? And just, you don't need to say, I think I'm worried about your mental health.
Yeah.
Because that's when we'll be like, I don't want to do a finger, but do you know what I mean? So
yeah. What's the kind of best bit of advice you could give any bloke watching this who hasn't opened up?
Yep.
What would you say to them?
Well, I think I've said this in a few videos, and everyone's going to say this today, is you need to speak to somebody. But I will say is, if the thing is, and I've seen this so many times, yet again, like the soup kitchens, if you don't start talking to even your best friend, your missus, your boyfriend, it doesn't matter what it is, what will happen is over time, you'll start to turn into a bit, people just think you're an idiot, you're rude, you're arrogant, blah, blah, blah. And then that relationship starts to break away.
Yeah.
So sometimes just literally just say, I'm having a really, really bad day. And they'll always say, why is that, mate? They might take the mick and have a bit of a laugh with you, but you're on their radar.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good. And what about what's the future for MANUP? Have you got any more events planned?
Well, we will. Well, the thing is we were going to do an event last year at the Cult Bar, but COVID obviously killed it. So that's why we moved into the video format of one-on-ones and the group chats and all this kind of stuff. But I decided, kicking and screaming, that we need to regulate ourselves the best we can. So that's why we're waiting on the Charity Commission. All of that paperwork stuff, which was horrible, is just what we're just waiting for the approval on that. And then we're going to work out whether we're going to go back to the event format or carry on doing the one-on-ones. And actually, from the feedback we're getting, people learn more from the videos of just having blokey conversations about how that person deals with or dealt with mental health issues. So we might just stick with that. And I think we're going to use our influence to support other people's events. Like we did one in Felixstowe, the Dare to Dip, where we went there at like 6:30, 7:30 on the Sunday morning to chuck ourselves into sea, just to show support.
Yeah.
Really.
We've had a question. Does MANUP have a website?
Yes, it's manup.how.
manup.how.
manup.how, yeah, because you'll see with our branding, because obviously the whole stigma of the term MANUP, our branding is always MANUP, one word with a question mark, or if we can't use a question mark, it's always manup.how, because we're always on about rebranding that horrible term.
Yeah, great, good. Well, I think that's been a brilliant conversation. I've really enjoyed that.
Thank you.
And I hope the viewers have as well. It's just, it's a subject that this particular subject, I can kind of really relate to it as well. So I found that a really enlightening conversation, and some good tips there as well on how quite a difficult area can be addressed within families, with, you know, among friends, in the kind of the right way. So I really appreciate your time and your openness as well. That's been a really good chat.
Well, that's what MANUP's about, is just being open and transparent.
Yeah, good stuff.